Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Culture Shock podcast. I'm yours truly, Culture Shock. We are here tonight to discuss the victory. Yes, another victory of Colts fashion. The Colts won another game. They wound up sweeping the Tennessee Titans. The score was 14-38. But before I get into it, I'd like to appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in, watching the game with me live if you was there, and just subscribing to the show on YouTube or Apple, Spotify, wherever you may be listening to. Check out our website if you haven't, thebluestable.com. We post articles and things of that nature on there. But let's go ahead and hop into this game. Go ahead and give the reaction of my thoughts on how the game went personally. Let's go ahead and start. I'm going to give you the rundown of pretty much the score breakdown of what happened, even though it was a lot of the Colts scoring rather than the Titans. But we'll talk about that when we get there. So starting off, the opening drive, the Colts settled for three. Bagley kicked a 43-yard field goal. Then the Colts wound up getting the ball back at the end of the first, which led to Jonathan Taylor scoring his first points of the game, what happens to make the score 10-0 after the extra point. The Titans found life, wind up scoring in the second quarter. Cam Ward threw a touchdown on tight end day to Gunnar Helm, which was a 1-yard touchdown. The score wound up being 7-10. Colts wind up finding a way to score. 3 minutes after that, Daniel Jones throws a touchdown to Michael Pittman Jr., which was a nasty catch. One-hand grab. There was a flag on the play, defensive pass interference, but it was declined. Wound up making the score 17-7 after the extra point. The Colts wound up getting the ball back in the third quarter after the Titans couldn't do anything at the beginning of the second half. Jonathan Taylor rushes for the most he ever rushed for in a play. 80-yard touchdown for the Colts, makes the score 24-7. The Colts get the ball back maybe 6 minutes after, and Josh Downs winds up scoring a touchdown after a pass interference. A holding call was declined to make the score 31-7. The Colts get the ball back again in the fourth, which Daniel Jones winds up throwing a touchdown to Jonathan Taylor, which pretty much felt like a jet sweep type play. And it winds up being a 19-yard touchdown to make the score 38-7 after the extra point. And last but not least, at the end of the game, the Titans scored. Tajay Spears with a nice run, 3 yards. The score 14-38. The game ended off with the interception with Chris Lamons, and then they pretty much, had the backups playing in after that scenario. But the game overall, I think the Colts offense started off slow. If you looked at the beginning of that opening drive, there was a lot of questionable play calls. I think they were just trying to pull some tricks out the hat. But there was a few throws from Daniel Jones that was kind of overthrown and underthrown this game due to the pressure of the Titans. Without Simmons, they still put a lot of pressure on on Daniel Jones, I would say, in my opinion. But most of the game, he still was cool, calm, and collected, regardless of the situation. Still played some good football, in my opinion, Daniel Jones. But most of this game was relying on Jonathan Taylor just doing the damage as usual. But I think Daniel Jones still had a solid game, regardless of those passes that pretty much hit the dirt or just threw away or just wind up overthrowing. There was a go route to Alec Pierce who wind up sailing over Alec Pierce and the defenders Darrell Baker Jr. In the game. But other than that, I think Daniel Jones still had a pretty good game. He's the game manager. He does it at a beautiful fashion. A lot of people still are having this conversation of why Jonathan Taylor is not in the MVP conversation, in which he should be. And today should have been another prime example why. Jonathan Taylor was just unstoppable. If you guys remember the last time the Colts played the Titans earlier this year, he ran for 3 touchdowns. And he wound up getting 3 touchdowns again against his team, which ended the matchup throughout the year. The Colts go up 2-0 again against the Tennessee Titans. The Titans still got a lot to do. It's just the team just trying to find out the right direction. Cam Ward has so much pressure on him this week. Of course, I would have loved for the pass rush to bring him down a little bit more. But I seen the Lou Anarumo scheme and the designs he had drawn up. The Colts defensive line got there a little bit quicker than normal. And the sack with DeForest Buckner pretty much dropping him back in coverage as a stunt, but giving him a free lane to run when he sacked Cam Ward just showed you how creative this defense can be. Lou Anarumo drew up a perfect plan, a perfect game plan against this Titans team. The Titans, they did a lot of damage, but couldn't really do nothing with it. They couldn't put up a lot of points. They drove down the field. A lot of drives stalled for them just due to this defense just wreaking a lot of pressure on them. Like I said, there was a lot of plays where Cam Ward had to make something happen out of nothing. A lot of running around, couldn't really stand in the pocket and do what he had to do. But he still made some beautiful throws in this game. But overall, I think the Colts defense had a better showing this week than what they did last week, especially with them being down pieces on that defense. This defense continues to impress me week in and week out. And this was another week, what I'm saying, when you don't play with your food and you go up against this Titans team, who's pretty much one of the worst teams in the NFL. You don't go out there and play with your food. You go out there, hit them in the mouth, and you play good football. You play grit, you hold on, you fight. And this team, they showed it this week. This defense had a good week this week, so I give them credit where credit is due. I think Mekhi Blackman had himself a good week. Jonathan Edwards had a better week this week. And Cam Bynum was all over the field this week, so we give credit where credit is due. Cam Bynum was flying around, making a lot of good plays this week, so give credit for him to doing that. And Jermaine Pratt was a guy I give credit to. I've seen him fly across the field a few times, made some big plays. Of course, you can't go without, giving credit to DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart. Both of those guys just being dogs in themselves and just going out there and making amazing play after an amazing play. So, yeah, got to give credit to them. Of course, we would have thought that the Titans would have took advantage, like I said in my prediction video, to take advantage of the linebackers in coverage. Hit your tight ends. Your most reliable receiver is Okonkwo, the tight end for the Titans. You would have thought he would have had a field day against his team, but like I said, due to the pressure, a lot of those plays that could have been made wasn't. There was a play where pretty much Cam Ward sent like a shot down the field to Mariner, and the play was there, but due to the pressure, the ball just exceeded. It just went past Mariner and everybody else. Mariner was wide open by himself. It could have been an easy touchdown. But like I said, this defensive line put a lot of pressure on Cam Ward this week. So they got to get a lot of credit for what they did this week. And this offense, they had some stall drives, but I think it had a lot to do with Shane Steichen and that offense just being creative and trying to come up with a lot of plays and designs. But overall, I still think this offense, after the second quarter, just turned it up a notch and just couldn't be stopped. The first quarter was a little iffy. The second quarter was and the Titans had life, but after the Colts defense had a few stalls, the offense was like, all right, it's our time to go out there and make some noise. And they really did. The Colts offense picked it up, gained the rhythm, and looked like the Colts offense we're used to seeing. And Jonathan Taylor had a lot to do with that. So we got to give him credit. He almost had a 200-yard day. I think he had like 150 in total. But, he had a solid day. Michael Pittman Jr. had a solid day. He was the guy that brought in the Ursa Qatar to start this week. He had 8 receptions, almost 100 yards. Very solid game from here. Alec Pierce had 2 big plays, man. Those grabs was just amazing catches. Michael Pittman Jr. was another guy that had an amazing catch. Amazing game, but that touchdown he scored just showed you how good of a catch receiver he is, especially when you got a guy like Daniel Jones. Them building the chemistry off the field, on the field. Every day it's just nothing but football around this team, and you just can tell the different energy and the aura it has. This team has a different feeling about them going into this year. They're playing amazing football, best team in the league. They're playing out of their minds right now, and this is something that you love to see as a Colts fan. Just after all we've been through over the most recent years, this is not the same Colts team that we're used to seeing, and it shows each and every week. And I feel like they're getting a step better every week, and they have players coming back from injuries that we're going to need, man. Kenny Moore was another guy that had himself a great week, man. Kenny Moore was out there balling. The sack he got on Cam Ward was an amazing play. But, like I said, Cam Ward was just seeing ghosts this week. And, that's bound to happen regardless of the situation, just due to the team he's on. He still has to develop and things like that. He's a rook. He's just going through the ringer, man. When you're a top pick and you're playing on these bad teams, you're going to see a lot. You're going to be faced with a lot of situations at quarterback. Like I said, he's shown some potential on some crazy plays he made this week. But overall, in general, hopefully they got a strategy for Cam Ward moving forward into the future. But this Colts team did what they had to do. They went out there and played amazing football. Tyler Warren, I wish he would have got in the end zone on tight end day, but it just didn't work out that way. Josh Downs had a good game. He got in the end zone, so that was good to see. We got to see A.D. Mitchell out there on the field, even though he really couldn't, do anything. His reps, the situation is still in the air what they want to do with him, so we're not sure. But shout out to Rodney Thomas the second. He was out there on the field. Eric Johnson, Adewale had a good game. Neville Gallimore is another guy that stood out to me. And Chris Lamont's catching that interception was just a beautiful thing to see, man. He was so hyped. I wanted this team to get a turnover so bad, man, for so long. I was just like, please, somebody catch a pick. And it wound up happening at the end of the game. Now, of course, I would have thought it would have been Cam Bynum or some things like that so we could see a cool celebration. But it just didn't work out the way. But it's okay. It is what it is at the end of the day. But like I said, this team overall in general had themselves a really good day. They were balling out. This team just looked like they want to keep this thing going, keep the wheel rolling. The win streak alive. They're still undefeated at home, which is a good thing. Protect your home turf. So that looks good. But next week they're going up against a pretty interesting matchup. There's this team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll talk about later on in the week. They'll be a team that they can pretty much shake some things up. So it's going to be interesting to see before this bye week how they look going into the bye. But like I said, give credit where credit is due, man. This team went out and balled out. They had a phenomenal game. I think, like I said, usually they turn up in the second half. So that's what they did this week as well. The first half was a little dry, but they turned it up. And Jonathan Taylor deserves to be in MVP conversations if he's not already. I don't know what type of football these guys are watching, but he's on pace. This is one of his best seasons I've ever seen from him. And he's just playing out of his mind. And this offensive line gets most of that credit too. The offensive line just looks so good. So good. The chemistry with them are top tier, man. This offensive line has been playing really good football, especially when it comes to run blocking, man. Those lanes couldn't be any more wider. I think if I was a running back, I could be able to run through those with the protection that Jonathan Taylor got back there, even Daniel Jones. It just shows you how good this offensive line is. That's where most of the credit has to go to, because without them, this offense would not move how they move, man. But everybody's on sync. Everybody's playing good football, locked in, just want to win. It's a winning culture in Indianapolis right now. The question is still what they're going to do before trade deadline. Like I said, you still have a few holes you can fill before the deadline is up. And like I said, when you're on cloud nine, they have all the momentum with you. One of the best teams in the league. You want to go and make that move to fill those holes before it gets in playoff time. And it's getting cold outside, so the weather might hit a little different. Like I said, you want to lock fully in before you get to this playoff run. The team's playing good football. There are some holes that can be filled on the defensive side, and you have players coming back from injury. You could look almost perfect, but you're on a good run right now. So it's going to be interesting to see what they can do before trade deadline, and just getting 1% better every day. And this team's looking good, man. So you guys let me know your thoughts in the comment section, how you feel about this game. Who was your standout players this week? And what didn't you like this week from this team? And what are you expecting going into next week? Or who do you want from trade deadline? That's another question that you can answer in the comment section. But you guys enjoy the rest of your weekend. Stay safe. Have a good week. We'll be back later to talk about the preview for the next matchup and all of these things. You guys go Colts, and you guys have a good one.